Well, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to call this work session of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to order. Today is Thursday, July 1st, 2021. The time is 9:30 a.m. And with us today are Commissioners Emily Lindley and Bobby Ginecca. I believe our General Counsel is logged in as well. I'm John Neerman, and friends, let's get to it. Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to please call the first item.
Item number 1 is the consideration of the upcoming Sunset Commission review of the agency, including the sunset process generally, internal coordination, timelines, and the 2011 sunset review.
Thank you. So, colleagues, before we hear from the Executive Director, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share any comments that you might have. Commissioner Lindley?
Good luck. I really don't have any comments. I'm good. Thank you. Good to see y'all.
Commissioner Ginecca?
I don't think we can say it possibly enough times. Thank you all staff for the incredible amount of work that is going to go into this sunset review process. I am already awed just in the documents and reports from the last sunset review of our agency, just how much work we have ahead of us. So I'm really not worried with the good team we have forming up on the task, but just really glad to have the opportunity to delve into the subject. So thank y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. I do think we have a great team assembled for this. I think even more people are going to be pulled into it than know it yet. And I guess my pep talk would be that our work product and our communication in this effort needs to be timely and of our normal sort of high quality. So please, if you get pulled into this, maintain a sense of urgency, continue to bring your normal standards of excellence to the work, and good luck, I guess, to borrow a phrase. Toby, I think that's all we have by way of preamble, so let me turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Chairman, Commissioners. I guess for the record, I'm Toby Baker, Executive Director. So I'm going to give sort of just a high-level overview of where we are right now, and then I'm going to pass it off to Elizabeth, who you guys all know, who's going to be really leading this effort for the agency. So, never a dull moment for TCEQ or a moment of rest. We went right off of a legislative session where I think as an agency, we ended in a pretty good spot. Our budget looks great. But right into this biennium, which is a sunset biennium for us. And the sunset process is a full 2-year process. It's not a sort of, we're just going to get this done this summer. And Elizabeth will go into some more of these details, but it is a full process. Back, several weeks ago, I asked the old Sunset team from 2011 to come in and sort of give us a high-level briefing on what Sunset was like in 2011 and how they handled it. So Diane Mazuka actually led that effort for the agency back then, and Chloe Lieberknecht was our Sunset advisor, and Mark Vickery was the executive director at the time. And so those three were kind enough to come in and spend a couple hours with us talking through how they set up the process, how they approached it, what to expect. And then there were more conversations that came out of that with each of those individuals. And back in 2011, I remember the sunset process for the agency was, I think the bill that came out of the sunset process really made the agency better. I think it put the agency in a position to better serve the state of Texas. And my overall goal or high-level goal for this is that the same thing would happen this time around, that when we get done with this process, we will end up with a sunset bill that will make us even better as an agency, that will better position us to serve the state of Texas in a better way, and that we use it as a positive opportunity and not view it as this extra work that we have to do. So I'm really really want to embrace this effort and use it as a self-audit of some sorts to try to have some tough conversations about the stuff that we do and the stuff that we don't do. So with that being said, after lots of conversations with that old Sunset team, and sort of understanding what a Sunset director would need to be able to do, there was one name in mind that just rose to the top, and that was Elizabeth. As you know, she's really shepherded our budget through the process now for multiple biennia, and she has the experience with in interacting with other state agencies, particularly the LBB, so she knows what that's like. She has experience interacting with legislators, so she knows what that's like, and that's going to be a significant part of this eventually. And so she was kind enough, I asked her, I gave her the opportunity to say no, but I invited her to come join the executive team and serve as Deputy Director for Sunset for the next 2 years. And I think that, if I'm being totally honest, I think it probably made her a little nervous at first, but I can tell you with 100% certainty it's already proven to be a great fit for her. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth and say welcome aboard, and I'm going to let her take the reins from here, and I'll jump in as needed, but I'd like for you to get to know her and let her lay out the process from here. Unless you all have questions for me at this point, Commissioners.
None for me. Colleagues, any questions? Seeing none. Elizabeth, have at it.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to lead this team and the agency through this process. It's, I would say Toby is correct that initially I was a bit taken back, but I'm really excited to have this opportunity and lead this team through the process. So I look forward to the challenge, and our only goal is to make this a successful sunset review process and to make sure that we're communicating with you and leading us through this process in a way that makes us proud. So with that said, I'm going to move on to our presentation and walk you through some of the items that we put together. Megan, can you click to the next slide? Thank you. So initially, the team has already launched a ShareNet page for the agency. As you can see there, we have an A-list team. We have Stephen Haygood, who was with the Office of Air, who has over 20 years experience. We have Melissa Keller from OCE, who also has at least 20 years experience. So that's going to be a common theme throughout this with the team, is that they're very experienced, very knowledgeable. They're subject matter experts, and we're really excited to have all of them. So including Kelly Mills from Office of Water, Jean Mueller from Office of Waste. And then also we have Alex Farrington, who's our executive assistant from Office of Legal Services. So we have an A-list team. We're really excited to have all of them. And I think with them, we're going to make this a successful project. So the first item in our sunset review process is the self-evaluation report, which is due September 1. So that's what we're working on very heavily right now with the offices. Some of the key items within that report, there's 12 sections, but I would like to highlight just a few items. You know, funding, of course, this agency can't function without having the funding. Also highlights our key functions and the agency programs that perform those key functions. That's going to be the heart of the self-evaluation report. Also, we can identify any major issues that we have within the agency that we would like Sunset to be aware of. And then finally, agency comments. This just wraps up the entire self-evaluation report. It also highlights any other items that we didn't get to include in some of the earlier sections. So it's a good way to wrap up the self-evaluation report. The next couple of slides is information that the Sunset Advisory Commission provided in the orientation that they had in early June. So the first item is the self-evaluation report. Then we have an orientation with the Sunset Advisory staff. They'll have follow-up meetings and information requests based on inquiries that they might want to review within the agency. Also, they may have meetings with public and other stakeholders for the agency. And then finally, they'll have an exit meeting prior to publishing their final report. Then based on their report, there'll be a hearing and some decisions made by the Sunset Advisory Commission. And they'll draft legislation for the ADA legislature. So talking about the timeline, how does all this occur in that 2-year period? So we begin in September 2021, and it really depends. There's 2 start times. It depends on where they choose the agency to begin, either September 2021 or the spring or summer of 2022. We don't know what our time frame is. We probably won't know until sometime in September. Once the review concludes, like I said, they'll make decisions and there'll be a hearing, and then that will occur around January 2023. And then the recommendations will be passed along to the ADA legislature in spring of 2023. And that's the sunset review process in a very short nutshell, kind of very brief overview.
And Commissioners, let me just jump back in real quick. I also was want you to know that Diane Mazuka is also on the line as well. So if there are questions about, or she's available to answer questions too. So if there's questions about the process last time, and maybe some of her experiences, she is available to answer questions. But I'll just reiterate what Elizabeth said. They're deep in this self-evaluation report right now. That's going to consume all of their time this summer, where it's a pretty tight time frame. I find it interesting. This is just my one editorial comment. Very small agencies have the same amount of time that we have to put that self-evaluation report together. So we have, and as you know, we have a very broad hat rack. So they're working hard on putting that together. And so, you know, we will be, there will be dates out there where things come and we're gonna have to turn them around pretty quickly. And then, as you know, and we sort of had this conversation with y'all one-on-one, but I'll say it here so everybody can hear. You know, there will be briefings set up with y'all, I think, on an every other week basis to make sure that you're up to speed on where we are in the process, that we're on track. And then obviously when we get to things like the major, you know, the issues inside the agency, we will be bringing those to y'all to look at before they go in the report. The self-evaluation report really is, you know, 80 to 90% of it is essentially collecting data from around the agency. And so I think that's really just finding the right people who know where to go look, finding what we need to put into it. But then there's probably 10% of it that's I think really more focused on the policies within the agency. And I think that's a place where we'll need, I think, you know, ask for some leadership from the commission to step in and help us. So, and then the process from there. I mean, just to prepare y'all, you know, the commission members, we don't know who's on the Sunset Committee at this point, but once the committee is named and appointed, we will be. I'll probably be asking each of you in your capacity to go down there at different times to meet with members and sort of share that workload between the three of y'all and between Elizabeth and myself and the deputies here in the office with me, because I think just from what I know, the more FaceTime we have, the more we can interact with those members and answer their questions and get ahead of some of, honestly, some of the things that are out there that we know are going to be brought up, and speak into those things. I think the better we will, the smoother it will be going into the next legislative session. So I'd love to go into that session, with them knowing who we are, knowing all about our programs, and being as transparent as we possibly can be with those members before we're we have a bill that's sort of, addressing the internal workings of the agency. So with that being said, I'll stop. I'm sure y'all have questions, and we will do our best to try to answer them with what we know at this point.
Toby, none for me right now. Colleagues, any questions at this point? Emily, Bobby?
Questions. I just have 2 comments that y'all already know, but I'll just say them here now, I guess, type thing. But, when we talk about when the commissioners get briefed every other week, especially since the summer is so tight, y'all obviously don't have to wait until every other week to reach out to us and bug us, which but just want to, I think I will, I'm assuming the other 2 gentlemen will be comfortable with me saying you can bug us anytime, especially on this stuff. It doesn't have to wait until the every other week. And, the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking just then is, as this moves forward, obviously, yeah, I think we need to have a lot of interaction with whoever ends up being on the Sunset Commission. But at the end of the day, all the members are going to be voting on our bill. And so even when conversations need to happen with any member, whether they're on the commission or not, I will always make myself available to be helpful to the agency or whatever. So I don't want us to, we need to focus on Sunset Commission, but there's also a greater group of individuals that'll be voting on our bill at the end of the day. So happy to meet with whoever. I'll just put it that way. But no questions. Thank you.
I had just a couple questions, and the first is on budget. And I noticed that the funding is one of the explicit sections in that self-evaluation report, but I just wanted to ask Elizabeth, and perhaps if Diane has any insights she wants to chime in on as well to add color, that would be helpful. But I'm curious how much of a platform this process will give us to try to approach LBB with some asks, conversations, suggestions about our performance measures, or if Sunset's taking a deeper look at funding more structurally, does that naturally fit into that sort of a deeper dive where our agency is going to need to be looking seriously at other tangential, not Sunset direct, but there's enough of a spotlight of Sunset Review shining across our agency. But I'd love to just hear from you about the potential or the expectations.
Let me jump in on that just real quick, because I want to start with an answer that's not related to Sunset. We're already sort of internally having the discussion over here about some of our performance measures, and do they still make sense where they are? Some of that is related to the use of technology. So because of technology and how interactive everything is becoming, there are, so for example, our comments are, the number of comments we get and the type of comments that we get has increased exponentially and is arguably a lot more sophisticated, a lot more technical than maybe it used to be. And so, and in part, a lot of that has to do with technology. And so looking through how do we react to that and do RTCs in a timely manner and try to hit those timeframes that we know that we're required to hit is something that we're looking at. So that's more of a statutory rule fix, but then there's also performance measures we're looking at that can be driven also by the ability to use technology. And so all of that's something that we've already sort of started discussing. In my mind, I think the Sunset process is a platform to have some of those discussions out in the open, I think, for the public to hear them and engage in those in some of those discussions. So, Commissioner, to your question, I think absolutely we use this as an opportunity to try to address some of those things and try to get better with those performance measures if they are outdated and need to be changed. Elizabeth, feel free to add to that.
I would like to add one thing, and you covered the sunset piece, but something that is new this time around for TCQ is the strategic fiscal review. They've added that as part of the sunset review process. It's managed by the LBB, but they do an extensive review of the agency's funding, the agency's statutory requirements, the performance measures. So it's also an extensive review on top of the already sunset evaluation that occurs.
This is Diane. The only thing I would add to that is previously Sunset stayed away from the appropriations aspect, but where they were interested in, and now based on what Elizabeth was talking about, they are interested in the structural funding of the agency. And so Baker is correct that this is a good opportunity to lay out the potential for some of those structural changes. The Sunset Commission staff, I think, are now going to do it slightly different than when we did it 10 years ago, where they really stayed away from budget and appropriations items. But I think with this new strategic plan, that'll give the agency that opportunity.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Diane, Elizabeth, and Toby. I'm curious. I had a second question, and now I've got a follow-up question to the first. Apologies, but I'm just curious now with this, particularly with the strategic fiscal review. Do you think that LBB or Sunset will be looking perhaps at each of our programs individually to see if that whatever the revenue structure is for that function, whatever the output is, the cost on our staff and agencies? For instance, if they look and discover that one area of our agency, one program, whether it's a statutory rule-based, federal-based revenue stream, will they be flagging, hey, this is out of sync because of complaints, the agency is spending far more than it's taking in, or is that more structurally funding in a different sense, different scope? Just curious if you have any nuance to add on that.
My experience with Sunset, Commissioner Janek, is they can look at whatever they want. So if they find something in the agency that speaks to what you just described, then absolutely that I think they have their authority's broad, and they can really look at everything. So if they find that disconnect, I think that you're sort of highlighting, and they believe there's a disconnect there, then yes, they can bring that forward. I think where the challenge for us lies is if we think that disconnect is not there, we need to be able to tell that story and make sure they understand why that perceived disconnection doesn't exist. And so I think that's some of the things, those are some of the challenges we're going to have to just wrestle with as we go through the process.
I like that. Thank you. I appreciate it. And the last question I had was just speaking to that, your remark, Toby, about the self-evaluation report. You described it as 80 to 90%, just collecting data from all around the agency. And then that devilish little 10% piece that speaks to policy. That's always dangerous for us as an agency, for us as agency staff. We run away from that space because that is very clearly owned and reserved by the state's leadership, state policymakers. But in my opinion, and in working with our elected officials over the years, I've come to appreciate how much of a very nuanced line, a tightrope that they walk in terms of sunset. And the sunset process, the sunset bill for an agency really doesn't delve into political fights outside of the operations and governance of the agency. But depending on when and how early in that process you engage and bring it to the attention of the sunset reviewers, the sunset committee members, the other agency interested chairman in the legislature, everyone can quickly come to an opinion that's a little more nuanced and agree, well, here's some pretty big policy changes, but they're so critical to the functions and operations of the agency. So I wanted to name that there is a very unique opportunity. And for many of us, we will not be with this agency the next time sunset comes around. So in a very real sense, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to try to improve our agency's service to the Texans and the residents of other states adjacent, other countries adjacent. I think it's just too good of an opportunity to pass by. So I'm curious to hear what conversations do you anticipate having with staff? How do you anticipate putting out the question to ask all of our agency experts, whether they've been here a day or years and years to set that typical fear aside of raising policy suggestions or stepping out of where our typical role is, just to say, hey, this could be something, elevating it. I'm curious to hear, Toby, what is your mind and what's in your thinking there? And I have to be shamelessly candid here. I can't help but take a page out of your book and really see some value in that open door policy you set the day one you became a commissioner here at our agency and wanted to affirmatively tell staff, hey, come into my door. And I almost want to echo that for this. If anybody's got any crazy ideas in regards to sunset, especially this next month, while we're urgently trying to put together that sunset evaluation report, I would very much love to open my door and hear from any staff who have any crazy ideas. But I recognize I'm 1/3 of the decision-making process at this step, and I think our executive director has the entire piece of it. So I'll turn it to you. What in your view would be helpful to ask from staff in terms of getting that kind of input? And if you haven't considered throwing the gates open, what do you need from us to have that assurance or comfort to give staff the greater degree of freedom to be able to say, hey, I know we could get in trouble, but this, using the example I talked about, where the changing caseloads and the existing revenue stream is out of sync, it's always particularly dangerous for us to make what could be misinterpreted as political arguments one way or the other, but there's just so much more of an opportunity. So I'll stop there. What do you have to say on that?
So we have liaisons in each of the offices inside of the sunset liaisons in each of the offices across the agency. And so we're asking each of the offices to self-identify those issues that they think, part of it is we are constrained by time. And so being able to really flesh out those issues and make sure that we capture them correctly. So we're asking each of those offices to put those ideas together for us. We will be, obviously, I think you guys have your idea of what you know of issues that are out there at the executive level. We know of issues that are out there. So the idea is that it would sort of percolate up through those offices, then be brought to the sunset team. Our plan is to put those together in a list of possible recommendations and bring them to each of y'all separately to take a look at. And so we plan on generating that list, and we will be visiting closely with each of you to make sure we land at the right list to go into the final self-evaluation report. And so that is coming from each of the offices, coming through us, and then we'll bring it up to you guys in the form of recommendations that y'all will then have an opportunity to weigh in on. And Commissioner, I also want to note that it's not just within the agency. We've already had at least one request for a meeting with outside groups, and so part of this is going to be working with stakeholders as well. In hearing what they have to say and seeing how that fits in with that sort of issue component, policy component that's going to go in the self-evaluation report. And so we will be interfacing with those groups on a pretty regular basis as well.
I really appreciate that response. I think that gives a lot of context, and I think I also hear that implicit plea for extra working room, and I take to heart your observation that we have the same deadline as all the very teeny tiny agencies with very limited explicit focuses, and we're not that kind of an agency. So I really appreciate your being so thoughtful about it. I certainly hope within the office structure, within all of our divisions, we get a very robust, meaningful, lively, fully utilized staff input feedback loop. And I'd love to see all the support from the top of the agency, calls directly from exec to the agency leadership. No, really, please pass up to your managers and team leads and work leads. But I'm certain we're going to do it with full enthusiasm that we always do. So thank you so much.
If I did check my retirement date before the sunset process started, just so y'all know. Unfortunately, not there yet. I say that jokingly. I'm actually very excited about this. I think the sunset process in 2011 made the agency better, and I think that we can have that same outcome with this one. And so, it's in some ways, I'll just say it's exciting to be sort of asked to engage in the policy discussion, because as y'all know, as the commissioner said, we really don't have that opportunity. And we try not to. We work hard to stay within the bounds of our regulatory framework the legislature has given us, that the governor expects of us. And because of that, I think we've been successful as an agency. So it's interesting to sort of be asked to step into that policy discussion a little bit. And it's a little nerve-wracking, but I think we can do it well.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have any other questions. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Bobby. Yeah, by the looks of things, I think we may have exhausted the commissioner's questions. Anything else from you, Toby, Elizabeth? I think this forum is really helpful in just, getting us all together and developing a common understanding of what the process is and talking about some of the issues on the front end. And I appreciate that Toby, you and Elizabeth are going to be, and others on the team are going to be communicating individually with commissioners at whatever frequency we need to. But we should keep an eye out for future work sessions if we want to, continue to convene as a group, and so that, in those cases where it's going to be really helpful to have the three commissioners visiting directly with each other and having a common understanding, let's not hesitate to schedule more of these.
Absolutely. I do have to mention one thing, that Margie and Tracy are coming back on a part-time basis to help out. So if you see those faces around, make sure and say hi. Worth noting.
That's great news.
Margie Lagarde and Tracy Miller, for those following from home, two of our rock stars from OLS and OCE, respectively. Great news.
All right. Anything else on sunset on item 1? Okay, hearing nothing.
All I would say is that just like anything else our agency does, I think the key for all this to work well is just going to be communication, right? We're pretty good at it. We can always be better, and a lot of it's going to be internal. I mean, it is complicated to have 3 different conversations with us, but that's just kind of the way it's set up and going to have to work. But I would rather over communicate on a lot of this than just I have gotten in trouble in the past and I just assume someone knows something. So for me personally, don't ever assume I know something or know what you're talking about. Just over communicate with me. I would just ask that. And I will say I appreciate the positive attitude, Toby. I probably need to have a little bit more of that juice, whatever you're drinking, because I have a little bit more of a doomsday situation going in my head, which, probably not the best way to be thinking about sunset, but I appreciate the sentiment, and I'm going to work myself to look at this as a more positive situation, because there are good things that will come out of this and that will benefit the agency and, as Bobby was saying, all Texans. So, thanks.
Thanks, Emily. Good comments. I agree. Anything else on item 1? All right. Well, colleagues, item 2 is executive session, and I don't have any topics for executive session. I don't know if you guys have any need to meet in executive session. Put that to you.
I do not.
I'm likewise good, if y'all are.
Okay. Well, just because I'm a creature of habit, I think we need to have our general counsel call the next caption at least, make that announcement, and then I'll gavel us out here. Mary?
Yes, item 2 was for closed session, but the commission will not meet in closed session today.
Well, thanks everyone for a very productive and useful work session. With that, the time is 10:05 a.m. and we are adjourned.
Thank you all.